Hello and welcome to Creature Club. This is a podcast. Every episode we are going to examine a monster listed in the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition monster manual. This week, I don't know if it's fair to say week, this time we'll be going over angels in all their forms.
Guests, Daniel?
I am Daniel, to start, and I am of course joined by my handsome and effervescent friends, Timothy Porter.
Right over here.
And DC.
Yo.
Who is also called Mikey. Sorry.
Yeah, Mikey DC, that's me.
In this podcast, what we like to do is we start with a kind of overview of the monster. So we kind of talk about its history, both in a literary sense and in the sense of Dungeons & Dragons specifically. And then we kind of talk about the mechanics of the creature. Then we talk about the encounters we could design around the creature. And then we kind of... then we might sort of riff on that a little bit. I think especially this time, because we're talking about angels and there are 3 types of angels, what we might do is kind of apply this broad format to each angel individually, and then maybe kind of have a revision session at the end where we talk about all the angels and maybe review if there's any cool encounters we could do with the 3 types working together.
And whatever way we decide to format that and release it, you've already seen it, but we don't know right now. So
yeah, we literally actually have no idea what's going to happen.
So you guys know, you have the power. Or we'll know at some point, but not right now. So, sure, we'll get into the meat and the bones, and we'll just... what are angels like in D&D in general? What are the 3 of them like, just to start with?
Well, wait, why don't we start with what angels actually are in real life, just in case people don't know.
Wait.
Do we really,
real life, huh?
Do we really need to? All right, well,
I think so.
Wait, okay, well, go ahead.
Let's go very briefly. So,
yeah,
angels are...
after you, Daniel.
I was only going to say, so angels are described in a lot of different religions. They come up, obviously, in all the Abrahamic religions, which are Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, if you didn't know.
I've never heard that term for them. That's weird.
There you go. Abrahamic because Abraham.
Because of Abraham, yeah. But go ahead.
Because of Abraham. But anyway, but they also come up in Sikhism, and they also come up in, I think, Jainism, and they're also in other mythologies. They actually come up a lot in
they're everywhere.
the world. They're sort of they have their differences, of course, but like the kind of, I suppose, iconic description of the angel that we would have in our reality would be that they're sort of they're kind of the divinely empowered servants of a god,
and often used as divine representatives, like representatives of the word of whatever god it is, like
representatives and soldiers and just warriors as well, like mighty figures, really. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And kind of like they're also kind of distinct. So like, whereas humans are viewed as kind of being part of like the world, angels are kind of from another place. Like they're not, I guess, creatures. Like they're not like, a dog or whatever. They're like sort of made of something different. I think a lot of the time implied. So that's angels in reality. It's also worth mentioning that obviously, interestingly enough, a lot of the times the descriptions of angels in actual texts are a lot vaguer than what you get in fine art. So obviously, when I say angel, you two, and almost certainly everyone listening to this podcast, thinks of sort of a handsome figure. Honestly, let's be honest, probably white because of the Renaissance,
with big wings, big white wings.
Yeah, big feathery wings. But there's actually there's no like reason that has to be the case. There's actually a really interesting painting by William Blake. I think it's called Angel of the Revelation, maybe, or Angel. But anyway, it's just basically it's a painting of an angel, but the angel in question doesn't have wings. They're basically just a really big, proud person, and they're kind of shining with this internal light and stuff. It's a cool painting, but it's just worth mentioning that obviously, like it's only one interpretation of angels. But
yeah, I think I read one time that angels were never really described as even humanoid. They were like some other different shape of like almost like eyes rolling around or something, or not like that. But I remember I saw another painting like with like an eye or something, and it's almost like a figure that's not humanoid at all. Like it's almost like that. But yeah, but of course we all know him. Like we all know them to look from like fine art paintings, as you said, as like,
absolutely, yeah,
big old men with like swords and
chiseled
feathers,
abs,
chiseled abs.
Yeah, big like handsome, muscly figures. Obviously, if for example, like me, you've played a lot of Magic the Gathering, in that all of the angels, I think at least all of them, are female rather than male. So obviously there's also depictions of angels as female, but that's kind of immaterial. So that's what they are in, I guess, our reality. But what are they in Dungeons and Dragons? Very similar, it turns out.
An angel is a celestial agent sent forth into the planes to further its god's agenda for weal or woe. I just came up with that at the top of my head, so
wow, that was really good.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Fantastic line.
Yeah, I felt the inspiration. I decided to say it.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, no, that's the first sentence, you know, and that's a very good sentence to understand what an angel
really is. Like they're God's wrath and they're God's word kind of thing, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also worth mentioning that obviously a lot of the time, so it sort of describes that angels are like, you know, these divine figures that aren't of the material world. But one of the factors mentioned in this 5th edition monster manual, and also in other ones, is the idea that sort of angels are servants of benevolent gods. Which is interesting to me, because I think it's kind of limiting in a way.
It is quite.
It even describes. I think it even describes in 5th edition how like all angels are lawful good, even if the god in question isn't a lawful god. They have lawful good angels.
I was just about to mention that, where like it says lawful good on all 3 of these angels. You know.
Well, I suppose whatever they've been sent forth to kind of represent their god as, that is the law that they follow. Is maybe the idea that they're trying to get across.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually a fair way to represent it. It might be fair to say that like angels are always lawful because they always obey their god.
Yeah.
But I think maybe we'll discuss it more as we move through this. Through these angels, but
that's going into like what is good and what is evil kind of territory. You know?
Yeah,
like,
I mean and then obviously the second thing it talks about after it talks about angels being, you know, divine and blah blah blah. It also talks about the idea of a fallen angel, which obviously famously in Abrahamic religions is Lucifer.
Yeah.
But like there's a lot of interesting ideas even in this short passage. It talks about the idea that like a fallen angel is actually as powerful as its non-fallen brethren, which I think is immediately very very interesting. Because it means that like they aren't any weaker, which means they're still a threat or a potential ally. And it even talks about how
kind of cast out.
Yeah, how they could be cast out, but they aren't necessarily. And even because, like, obviously the angels here are listed as being lawful good, the idea that, like, you know, even if they fall from grace, they're still kind of inherently good and well-intentioned. And it even talks about here, like, the idea that, you know, some fallen angels resign themselves to an isolated existence on the material plane, living in disguise as simple hermits. I think that immediately made me think of how cool it would be if you had an angel impersonating a cleric of the church that their god is of. Does that make sense? So like they're almost trying to rediscover their connection to their god by acting as a cleric.
But they can all change shape as well, so they can turn into like a cat or something.
Hide their wings and turn into a cat.
Yeah, or a cat with wings. That's a pretty cool image. Sorry, I just saw change shape and all. Oh wait, no, sorry.
I think it's just Deva.
Only the Deva can do that. Never mind.
Yeah, but let's hang on. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Oh, sorry. Yep, I'm a bit too excited now.
You are. So in Dungeons and Dragons, it describes 3 types of angels, which are Deva, as we mentioned, Planetar, and Solar, and that's their power level as well. The Deva being sort of it's described as being like a messenger, whereas the Planetar is the soldier, and the Solar is the general of the army.
Yeah, the kind of archangel kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very much the Solar is very like it represents that idea. So I guess we can start talking about Devas now.
Yeah, might as well.
You're probably or maybe you're not. It doesn't matter. I did my research. You're probably wondering where the term Deva comes from.
Where does it come from, Daniel? I actually don't know.
It's a Sanskrit term.
Okay.
The term Deva comes up in a lot of religions, like the term angel. It comes up in Buddhism, Hinduism, and it comes up in Jainism. And in all of those contexts, it's actually quite similar to an angel. It's either a divine being or sometimes even a god. And it's also part of, I think it comes up in some mythologies as well. But anyway, but yeah, I think the word might mean holy, but I could be wrong. But it is a Sanskrit word, so there you go.
Yeah, Deva, divine kind of idea, probably. Although Sanskrit
exactly,
is very distinct from the kind of Latin languages, as far as
But
I know.
I think you might be right. But it is interesting to think that that has the same. There's the same tonality there. It's almost like that idea that like words need to sound right.
Yeah.
Like so people will will move towards the same sounds even if we're isolated. But yeah, so that's Devas in, I suppose, again, our world. But what are Devas in D&D?
Devas are angels that act as divine messengers or agents to the material plane, the Shadowfell, and the Feywild, and they can assume a form appropriate to the realm they are sent to. So as you said, Daniel, they're very much the kind of representatives to the people when there's no kind of wrath to thing to like imbue.
They're quite diplomatic, I suppose, would maybe like the term.
Still enormously powerful though.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, they're about like challenge rating 10. That's like
that's the same as the Aboleth.
Same as the Aboleth, yeah. So once you're done your Aboleth, you can go straight into fighting the Deva.
Straight into fighting angels.
Fight
the gods. Take on a god.
And you're asking, how do I fight an Aboleth, or what should I do fighting an Aboleth? Listen to the last episode. Come on, come on.
Or don't, but it's actually really good. I thought I had a really good time making that.
Same here, yeah.
I've also, because I've mentioned you guys off the podcast, I've sort of gone a bit. I've gone deep. I need a way out, and the way out is more research. So I also, as well as researching, angels and devas, I've also researched devas' origins in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
So this is like I'm really happy about like what I found here. So devas are initially described in issue, I think 63. I've got it up in here. Yeah, 63 of Dragon Magazine, which is the official magazine of Dungeons and Dragons. They used to produce two. I think Dragon is the one for DMs and Dungeon is the one for players.
Oh, cool.
They might just be producing one now, but I know that used to be their model. So that's what Dragon Magazine is, and that's why it's called that. So it describes kind of the Deva as a creature, but unlike the Deva listed in the 5th edition Monster Manual, here there are actually 3 different types of Deva: astral, Movanic, and Monadic. And you might be wondering, are these 3 Devas interesting? Not really.
Daniel, are these 3 Devas interesting? Oh.
No, not really, Tim, no. They're very, the reason there are 3 types, it's very kind of hinged on the different planes of existence in Dungeons and Dragons, like the material plane and the negative energy plane, and like it's very technical. I can understand why they made the decision to simply have one Deva. That all said, actually each of the original Devas from this first edition of Dungeons and Dragons, they all have a little bit of a mechanical flair that I'll bring up later on when we're talking about our meat and potatoes.
Sweet.
But the other point I wanted to make, and I mentioned this to you, DC, is that it's actually really cool because this article on how Devas work was written by Gary Gygax. He actually designed the Deva, the Planetar, and the Solar.
All in the same edition?
No, all in the same edition, but in this Dragon Magazine he does the Deva, and in the next one he does Planetars and Solars. So we'll bring that up when we're talking about them.
And it's on the same issue as the Barbarian.
Yes, very, very cool. It's on the same issue where the Barbarian is first introduced, as well, built by Gary Gygax.
Big fighty boys.
Yeah, big, strong, fighty Conan boys. But it's actually really cool to look at the Deva, the Planetar, and the Solar, and how they're described, and look at then how they're represented in 5th edition, and like they are different, but the like iconic elements of the creature are still there. And I was saying to DC, I actually think it's really cool that like they've very clearly decided they want to keep Gary Gygax's designs alive. And I think that's cool. I think it's cool that like they pay homage to the guy who created the game, but like they have simplified the angels enough. I cannot. There are so many pages of rules on these guys, but like like they've simplified them enough now that like they are straightforward and they're iconic and it's immediately obvious what they do and what they're good at. But like if you were to compare like the idea of the angels to the ideas presented in 5th edition, you can see, oh yeah, they've deliberately kept that because it's really cool. Oh, they deliberately kept that idea because it was exciting. Like it's all there. And I actually think that's kind of cool, especially because back in 4th edition, they swapped to a different kind of angel.
Oh.
And obviously they've swapped back in 5th edition, which is just a little bit of interesting history.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, speaking of 4th edition, I'm looking at the Deva player character. Right now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of strange because they kind of like they do it almost like they almost like they're very humanoid looking, and they kind of make them more like immortals. Like they have like immortal origin. Your spirit is native to the astral sea, and then like memory of a thousand lifetimes, where you can kind of think back memories of different lifetimes you use, but that's like a power you can use. But like, it's they're still messengers of gods, and they're kind of like basically angels, but like they have no wings or anything. They can't fly in it. Like it's very interesting. Because I remember people playing as Devas, but back in the 4E days.
It would be an interesting character to play because you'd kind of basically be bent to the will of whatever god you had, and then the DM would probably use that against you potentially, and just be like, "No, you got to do this now," or just be like, "No, you keep doing you. You're on the right path. Yours is the path of just whatever, you know."
Righteous.
Cool. Righteous.
Path of the just man.
Bodacious.
What?
Are you looking at them and thinking bodacious?
No,
they look like
beautiful men.
The Deva looks like a surfer dude, and
he actually does look
the
a bit
picture.
like he's got that. Yeah, he does.
The surfer dude with like a morning star.
So on the subject of pictures, should we get onto our? Should we get dig into our meat and potatoes?
All right.
Let's dig into the meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
So welcome to the meat and potatoes section of Creature Club.
Sorry, so I apologize. Yeah, when we say dig into the meat and potatoes, we're talking about like the mechanics of the creature in question.
Stats and stuff.
Yeah, stats and stuff. Like we try not to focus too much on the itty bitty things, but like even just kind of broadly going over, hey, what's this monster kind of good at, and what are they bad at? Like, what do the stats tell us about what the designers had in mind when they put this monster together?
And what information can we gather from this stat block that they give us, and how we can use this into our game?
Yeah, absolutely. So
sometimes also meat and potatoes means that we're just eating our dinner.
Yeah. Actually, it can also mean eat your dinner, eat your greens before you have your pudding.
Eat dinner and then come back to the episode and eat meat and potatoes with us.
Yeah, we like to kind of put a little spot in the episode where like a 20-minute block, I guess, where you have your dinner, just silence, you know.
We'll wait. It's fine.
We'll wait for you. Anyway, sorry, Dan, you were saying.
No, I was only gonna say. So you know, I think the kind of thing that strikes me immediately about the Deva is they're very, very naturally well armored. It's interesting that it doesn't describe them as wearing armor, but I suppose that's fine. That's kind of like up to whatever. But they are very, very fast. They have a fly speed that is 3 times faster than a normal player.
My goodness.
So they are probably going to outrun you, and then their like basic ability scores. I mean, like I said, we don't want to get too number heavy, but like. I mean, they're just better. They're just better than people.
They're just better than you.
It doesn't really matter like what sort of stats you rolled. They're probably just better than you.
And if you give him like, you know, a bit of chainmail on top of his like chiseled abs, then he would be like, which you wouldn't wear chainmail over abs. You have to put like a
hole just so you can see the abs.
No, I don't
Otherwise,
mean like that.
What's the point in having abs?
What's the thing that you put under chainmail?
Like a tunic?
Yeah, that kind of tunicky shirt. I think there's a name for it, but yeah, if you put on chainmail to him, then like he have more armor, or like a plate armor or something. You know, like you can give him more armor than that if you want to be like mean.
Yeah, or like the obvious thing that I always kind of drift towards. I mean, like just naturally is like, you know, just like look at the Deva. He's got a mace in one hand and nothing in the other hand. Just give him a shield.
Oh wow, yeah, you're right.
You know, like which I don't know if I would do, because his armor is actually quite high, and if you started giving him a shield, he'd kind of be a pain in the butt. Yeah. Or maybe he would. I don't know. He's a CR10 monster, so he's kind of a different beast. But like he's supposed to be a tough fight. Yeah. But like, you know, it's always something that I think is like super obvious. Is like, you know, if they have a spare hand and there's no reason, like there's no you don't feel like there's any reason you couldn't give them a shield. It's a simple way to increase armor class, and also like it's quite functional, I suppose. Like it's reasonable for this creature to not just have a blank hand. Like
yeah, but also what I kind of notice from these single blocks is like, I guess if you're able to fight CR10 monsters, they're not really supposed to, I don't think they're supposed to be used as like boss characters or boss fights.
Yeah, I very much agree.
And the challenge rating is very much like, if you have a group of 4, you can take on one of these things, which is like still a huge ask for a group of level 10 dudes.
If you're in like late game and kind of like you know, over level 10, you can probably fight maybe 2 of these and a couple other jabronis, you know.
And even so, I mean, they're not the fighters. Like if you want to piss off a god, you ask for a messenger and then kill it, basically. is how I kind of see them being used.
Oh wow, Tim, come on.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, it's actually it's a kind of an interesting point. The idea that like there's almost like more of a, I guess, a consequence for fighting a Deva versus any of the other ones because they're supposed to be messengers.
Yeah.
Although even still, they are like individually quite powerful.
Yeah.
I don't really. I almost think it's a bit strange that they aren't. That there isn't, I guess, a weaker angel, like basically like half the strength of a Deva,
Like
and
a
that would
Hermes.
actually be basically like a CR, like a challenge 5 angel that would actually be a messenger.
Yeah, like not a fighter
that makes
at
sense.
all.
Like because even like challenge 5 is very, very high, but if you're kind of talking about the idea that like gods are so powerful that their messengers are this powerful, I feel like actually the Deva is a little much, like just a little much, not a lot, but a little much.
But they don't. Their stats don't go beyond the like maximum capacity of a standard character, which is, I think, kind of what they were trying to get across. Like, this is just a really, really high level person, basically, with some supernatural abilities.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the Planetar right now, but we'll get to him. But just the stats are, look at those
Yeah,
stats.
don't look at the solar.
Yeah, I'm not.
Don't look directly at it; you'll go blind.
Oh my! Sorry, Tim. I looked, Tim, at the solar.
Mikey's
Yeah,
blind,
well-
guys.
Yeah, we'll get to him. We'll get to him later.
So other than numbers, what are some cool things about the angel stats? Okay, well, they are immune to being charmed, or exhausted or frightened. Exhaustion, I guess, is just kind of more technical. I guess it means they can pursue you kind of forever, which is cool in a way. But I think the fact that they're immune to being charmed or frightened just is sensible.
Yeah, because no exhaustion. Because like I just from the last page, the last thing, immortal nature.
Yeah.
An angel does not require food, drink, or sleep.
Yeah,
There
that
we
makes
go.
sense.
And I think the immunity to charmed and frightened is a good way to like prevent you from kind of turning them to your side.
Yeah, and it also
Effectively.
kind of represents their devotion.
Yeah,
That they are servants of this high power.
Damage
that a lot.
damage resistances. Radiant, of course, obvious because
Yeah,
I guess
makes sense.
godly power. Bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing for non-magical weapons. So you gotta enchant
So that's
that
the
weapon.
sort of that's the kind of classic like they resist mundane weaponry.
Yeah.
yeah.
Things of the
it's,
earth.
it's actually really interesting because that I feel I've been reading how the Devas worked in AD&D, and it basically says a weapon that isn't at least +1 can't hurt these guys, and I think that's their way of saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like rather than it saying like you need to have magic weapons, it just says if you don't, they'll just like shrug it off. Like they're not natural, they're supernatural, so you need a supernatural weapon. They speak all languages. I think that's actually kind of cool that they literally speak all languages,
And telepathy.
and they have telepathy as well. But I like that it just says languages all. I think that's I like that as a thing. I just feel like it's very appropriate, the idea that like you can't not be able to communicate with a messenger. I just think that's
Yeah.
really appropriate. Like the idea that they are literally built for this, and no matter what the hell you speak or where you're from, they can talk to
Every
you.
language. Wow.
I think it's a really clean solution that it just says all. Like,
What languages you speak? All of them.
what languages don't I speak?
None of them.
And then so that's all the sort of like smaller numbers. But hey, they've got some other stuff.
Yeah. That angelic weapon is a
yeah.
handy little spot. Although it is an extra little thing to remember as the DM. I feel like that could have just been put in.
It's already added to the attack. If you look in the
Oh, it is?
actions. Yeah, so it's already there, but it's just mentioned as an explanation for why that's there. And it's also it's a neat way of letting the Deva fight with a weapon, and then explaining how they do enough damage to still be a threat to higher level parties.
That's pretty neat.
That's a lot of
It is
damage,
pretty
guys. That's a lot of
It's-
damage.
That's a lot of fish.
48 radiant.
They've got some innate spellcasting, which is very appropriate, and they use charisma like a paladin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorcerer
So
as well.
yeah, and I think probably paladin is more on brand.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
these
but
guys.
like I'm just saying. I guess technically sorcerers do it as well.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And it says they can cast a couple of spells. They can cast detect good and evil at will. Makes sense. They can tell whether you're good or bad. They know when you're sleeping. They know when you're awake. And then they can
Sorry, I just blanked there for a second, but never mind. Continue.
Okay. And then they can cast commune and raise dead. Commune, I actually think, is to do with talking to people far away. It's kind of like a version of message, I think. If I recall correctly. And obviously raise dead is a very, very practical spell for adventurers, which is cool because immediately you've got a good reason to look for these guys. So the only thing I wanted to talk about here that's interesting in terms of their spellcasting and their abilities overall is the Deva, as it's listed here, has no way to get off the material plane. So if we assume that like we're playing in a sort of D&D setting where each of the gods has their own plane of existence, and then there's the material plane, which is where all the players live, the Deva can't go home.
That's a bit of a,
to bring its message.
That's a bit of a shit message. Yeah, shit
It's
messenger.
interesting
Like,
and because they specifically have teleport or some equivalent in previous versions. The Devas in AD&D just have teleport. They can just teleport. Which, as far as I recall, teleport in AD&D and I think even in 5th edition lets you go between planes as well. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it does. So it's just interesting to me that like maybe it's a power level thing, but I thought it was very unusual that like the Deva as they are described can't like leave basically.
can't go home.
Like,
you know, we're not letting you home.
Yeah.
like it could be to do with the idea that like if the party attacks them, they can't just run off. Which I don't really see how that's a problem.
Maybe
I
have
guess
to be recalled kind of thing. Is there? Well, I mean, at God, when it's a god, there isn't really like spells that they cast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like gods don't work like that. But like,
Yeah.
you know, if the idea is that the angel is kind of doing this thing for their god, it makes sense that they would be the one who teleport. You know, I don't know. It just, I thought it was an interesting aside just to mention that, like, isn't it interesting that like you would assume these guys could move between planes, but it doesn't actually give them a power for doing that. Maybe the idea is that it's so obvious that they don't bother listing it, and like it's maybe like, or maybe they didn't want to give it a spell because if they had a spell, the players could be like, oh, can't the Deva cast teleport or whatever? Like the idea is that like, you know, maybe different Devas for different gods have different means of traveling through the planes, and so it's more up to the dungeon master, which is very much sort of the 5th edition style.
Yeah, maybe like the god just brings them back.
Or they just like ring their boss and they like, you know,
Can I get a lift home?
can you crack open Portal 17?
Speaking of just having a call with your boss, that's actually basically what Commune does.
Cool.
It is a casting time 1 minute, range self, components VSM, and it's the duration 1 minute. And it's basically you can ask 3 questions of his deity, because they aren't. The spell even says that like not all divine beings aren't necessarily omniscient, so you might receive unclear as an answer to a question pertains to information that lies beyond the deity's knowledge.
Yeah, okay, so it's like a way for the angel to get guidance and stuff. Okay, that's cool.
Which makes them imperfect, which I think is really, really cool.
Oh yeah, I mean they're supposed to be more like Norse gods than they're like sort of I guess the Abrahamic god.
Yeah.
So finally they have magic resistance, which is just that they have advantage on saving throws and blah blah. It's just that they're harder to hit with magic, which is fairly standard honestly amongst higher level monsters, and especially things like angels and creatures from other realms and stuff. Obviously, like a huge dog isn't going to be magic proof, but like an angel is or whatever.
That would be terrifying.
a big magic proof
A
dog.
magic proof big dog. Nah, not for me. man.
Hellhounds.
Is that in this monster manual? No, okay, we'll get to that later.
I'll make I'll make you your own stat block for the big dog with immune to magic.
Yeah.
Call it
so-
Big
so-
Taco.
So actions. So it's got a mace. It can hit things with a mace.
Does it
That's
hit
fairly straightforward. It's not
multiple
very exciting.
times?
Yeah, multi-attack as well.
It literally has the ability to attack multiple times. It's as capable as a 3rd level fighter. But let's talk about its other 2 powers, because its other 2 powers are cool and exciting and very, very sexy.
Yeah, I'm just looking at healing touch right here.
Healing touch is extremely good.
Yeah, like
That is-
touch another creature, target magically regains 20 or 4d8 plus 2 hit points, and is freed from any curse, disease, poison, blindness, or deafness. And I remember you brought up before, Daniel, that like that's a great like adventuring hook. Like if you have
Yes.
like a party member who's dead, or like you need to like get like a one of the player characters like brothers or something in game is like sick or something, then like try and search for like a Deva or something, you know, maybe they can help you out, you know.
Or even to take an example from our own game, when our friend Jonathan, you know, was infected by by that dark god, and his hand was
by
all
the taint.
mucked up by the taint. Yeah, he could have if we had known enough about angels, we could have been like, oh, we need to find an angel, or like, you know, we could have had like that sort of quest hook where like we go and find this kind of emissary for a god to heal. Jonathan's character, which anyway, but like that's an example of a great way to do that, is like just apply a curse to a player and then they have to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And then their final ability,
well, healing touch, just as a last thing, is kind of like a slightly more powerful healing word. Like most, like it's a first level evocation, so at higher levels it's slightly more powerful, but it never quite gets the curse, disease, poison, blindness, or deafness curing. So
I think healing touch is supposed to be based on the spell just called heal, which I think is a 6th level cleric spell. Which does basically the same thing. It heals, and I think heal just heals you
70 hit points.
Yeah, it heals a lot more hit points, but it does the same thing of just removing any curses, diseases, poison, blindness, deafness, etc., etc.
Yes,
like it gets rid of all the conditions, and that's kind of the idea. Is that like when you think about the idea that the healing touch can be applied 3 times, then obviously 20 times 3 is fairly close to 70.
Indeed.
But of course the angel can just do it every day, forever. Every day, but the Deva has a final ability, which is also cool because the Deva has 2 cool abilities because it's too cool for school. And that final ability is change shape, which lets it just magically change shape into any humanoid or beast that is as powerful or weaker than the Deva.
Yeah.
And the coolest part is it gets to keep any of its gear, and it can either be wielding the gear or the gear is just melded into its body. So like it doesn't lose its mace, for example, but also it gains any of the new abilities of the creature it becomes.
That is cool.
Yeah. So it's
which
like a
is
true
very
cool kind of thing.
Which is very cool. Like, as in, if it's like I mean, I guess the obvious example is like, if it turns into a, I don't know, the big magic proof dog, it becomes magic proof.
Yeah.
It could technically become an aboleth then, and I wonder would it gain its previous life's ability.
The rules are it doesn't get class features, legendary actions, or layer actions, but it does get any of its normal actions.
Well, it's or beast, and
that's true.
Aboleth's not a
Aboleth
beast. It's an aberration.
It's an aberration, yeah.
Of course.
But yeah, they could appear as like any reasonable humanoid. They could appear as like a unicorn or like a wereboar or like whatever. Like maybe not a wereboar. They might have a different class. Sorry,
and
but
that,
you know what I mean.
And that also might be good for like if the Deva is here, then it could be hiding. Like it can be like a regular man, or as you said, it can be like a cleric. Like hanging around, and you just like hiding him in plain sight is a good idea for your players.
Deva could appear as robins. They could disguise themselves as small birds that you wouldn't notice.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about meat and potatoes, I do want to go back to those previous Devas we mentioned back from AD&D, because so even though I said that broadly they're not that interesting, and like especially thematically they're not that exciting or different, they actually each have a little like mechanical nuance that I thought was kind of cool, and I want to talk about them here just in case one or all of them seem interesting and you might want to apply them to your own Devas. So the Astral Deva, so just for as a point of reference, the Astral Deva described in AD&D is basically the Deva we have in 5th edition. It's like the winged guy who's the messenger, who has the mace. So like very much, very, very strongly tied to like the kind of image of the Deva we have now. He has a really cool ability. The Astral Deva has a really interesting ability where they say if they hit you with their mace and they deal, I'm going to read it out here exactly so I don't get this wrong. If they deal at least 20 damage with their mace when they hit, the person who's hit has to save, or they're knocked senseless. It says knocked senseless for 1 to 4 rounds.
I'd imagine that.
So I think it's reasonable to
equates to kind of stunned, or
I was going to say I assume that's kind of like the idea of like birds flying around your head, like the stars and the like stuff like that, like Looney Tunes kind of thing. But I thought that was really cool. The idea that like if a certain amount of damage is dealt, like you might get sort of like stunned by the force of the blow. So that's what the Astral Deva has. The Mavanic Deva has another interesting power, which is they are kind of tied to the material planes. Okay. So like very much like they're very suited to the natural world, and their ability is I'll just read this out verbatim because I think it's really cool. Plant life of any sort will not and cannot harm them. Similarly, normal animals will not willingly attack them. Reptiles and similar creatures, as well as monsters, will do so.
Reptiles are normal beasts.
Well, I think the idea here is I think the idea is it's referencing like the serpent.
Snakes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Why did it have to be snakes?
Why did it have to be snakes?
But that idea of
That's my Harrison Ford, by the way.
It's very
In case
very
you didn't
good.
know who I was doing.
I thought you had Harrison Ford there with you for a second.
Yeah, I actually thought I was going to say, can he sponsor our podcast?
Yeah, sure, ask him.
Give us.
Harrison, can you? He's actually gone already. Sorry,
He's already gone. That's
he's
fine.
on his
He's very busy.
He's on his motorbike now, and he's driving off to Blade Runner.
Yeah, there you go.
There he
Driving
goes.
off to 2049.
Yeah.
So that's that's interesting to me. Like the idea that like, Devas are kind of the natural world won't oppose them. I think that's kind of cool. And just like again, it's a little flourish worth mentioning.
Yeah.
And then the last one is kind of the weirdest. The monadic Deva. They have a power where they fight with basically a stick. Like no joke, it's described as normally carries a metal rod which can either be used to pierce or smite at up to a 10-foot distance.
My goodness. So
So
they have reach.
they just use this. They just use a stick basically. They use a metal stick. But
Big old metal stick.
But the interesting thing here is they have a rule which is that because like the Deva in 5th edition, they have a multi attack. It specifically says if they attack the same creature twice, the second hit will do double damage. Which is interesting because it's an example of the power being encouraged to be used a certain way, like rather than multi-attack at the moment, which is like, you can kind of attack whoever. Like this is like you can still attack whoever, but if you do attack someone a second time, you do a little bit more damage.
Maybe that's kind of a divine smite kind of thing. Like if you are concentrating your energy into a single thing, then it gets the extra kind of holy damage or whatever.
Yeah,
possibly.
true. I just thought I just thought they were all worth bringing up because they were all kind of interesting.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's your Devas, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed them.
Whoa, Tim.
We're moving on. No, I'm kidding.
We haven't had our dessert yet. I don't want to call these all different foods.
Tim sees a director and he's just like, wrap it up.
Yeah, the director is he's burning all the money that we're supposed to get paid.
Oh, jeez.
Every second, it's another block of cash.
Really block of 20s, like
Yeah.
we're absurdly well paid. We're not paid at all.
Please sponsor us.
Please
Please sponsor us, Harrison Ford.
sponsor us.
So
Harrison Ford specifically.
tell us, Daniel.
No, I was only going to say we have to talk about encounters.
We do. Yes, let's talk about encounters.
So encountering a Deva. So I feel like definitely when we talk about the idea of encountering the Deva and the Deva in your game, I at least this is my feeling. I wouldn't be opposed to so for example, okay, so the Deva described here is a lawful good, it's got a mace, but like I would definitely be the kind of person who gets the Deva and goes, okay, lawful evil, resistant to necrotic damage, and make that angelic weapon damage necrotic, and swap that mace out for a scythe.
Ooh.
And now we've got like the angel of death, right?
Yes. Yes, that's nice.
And I would like that, and like maybe swap healing touch for decaying touch that specifically curses you if he gets to touch you. Like to me, it seems like I suppose my only complaint about the angels is because they're very much described as being like, oh, they're the servants of benevolent gods. Is like, I don't know if it ever describes the servants of malevolent gods.
I suppose the kind of devils and demons kind of.
But devils and demons are kind of on their own team.
Yeah,
a lot of the time, it's almost like there's devils, demons, gods, good and evil. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and they're all vying for the power. So but anyway, like, I guess my only point is like, I feel like a lot of the time, like, if my party were fighting an angel, it would be an angel of an evil god. Yeah. Who they had just pissed off enough,
You kind of want your, I like to play games where my player characters are good guys and heroes,
Yeah, exactly.
So I would like them to fight evil, and if they were going to be an evil angel, angel of an evil god.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that like the change shape power of the Deva is really cool on an evil character.
Yeah,
because obviously they'll like misdirect the group.
Spying as a crow, or
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
He can be like spying on him and like hiding and just kind of getting information for the god, whoever he's messaging for, if he can get back to him. Once again, we don't know. We don't have a spell here except for commune, actually. But Like he can be hiding. He can be like he can be a big dog that's just like staring at him, or a cat on the roof who's just like getting information on the party. Like you can do a lot with that, you know.
It becomes 2d6 wolves.
Yeah, you can like let's say okay, challenge rating 10. That's like 10 wolves. You can be 10 wolves.
10 wolves.
I think it's like I think even the idea that like it would be kind of cool. I don't know how you'd pull it off exactly, but it would be very cool if the party, let's say like game 3, the party find like the sword of Pelor or whatever, right? Pelor being a conventional good god in Dungeons and Dragons. Sorry, just to clarify, people who don't know.
That's right.
But like they find this like magical artifact of a benevolent god as described, right? And then like from that day forth, there's always a Deva of an evil god following them.
Ooh, could you have one of
like
each
you know what I mean?
them?
But just constantly like changing shape and blending in and like never engaging them directly, but always watching.
Well, that might be a little tricky to work in, because if you bring the team's attention to that, then they're going to immediately investigate it. But to like cut across that it is there, you have to be like really, really like sneaky with how you're wording things. You're like, oh, you walk into this field and there's lots of birds around, and you're like, one of them is evil and following you.
Well, no, I mean,
with that you gotta have a bunch of other birds and other situations following them that are just normal. You know, you gotta have stuff like that where you have to misdirect them and kind of have a.
I mean, or like you can reverse engineer it. So you could just say that like when the Deva reveals themselves, one of the more intelligent members of the party realizes that bird has been following them for weeks, and they never thought anything of it because it's just a bird.
Yeah, actually, that makes sense too.
Sure.
But yeah, like I just think like it's such a natural fit, and even the idea that like the Deva could attack the party as a lower level monster. You know what I mean? Like the Deva could say turn into I don't know. Like, you know, something actually that's like I described before, a unicorn, right? Like unicorns are traditionally good creatures, but this evil Deva shapeshifts into a unicorn and attacks the party, and now the party think that they've pissed off a unicorn, and they're like, what did we do? Like, you know what I mean? Like they're like, but we didn't
myself.
Like, and like obviously like that is a mystery in of itself, and maybe they go and like they head into the forest, like maybe they find a real unicorn who's like, what are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there's a lot of room there.
Okay, so the Deva it shows itself off to the party, and it's there, and they're about to fight it. Like, how would you guys do the encounter with the angel? Like, it's the actual encounter, the actual fight, or whatever with it.
I think I think it depends on a lot of things. I think if we're taking the idea I described before, the idea that the Deva has been tracking them, and maybe what's happened now is they've received the order from their god, seize the artifact of the good god because I want it for me. So like they're deciding to kind of ambush the party. I would probably let's go ahead and assume that it's an evil god. But let's say that because we described this before, like let's say angels are always lawful, so maybe the angel isn't a dishonorable opponent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they won't ambush the party. They won't they won't like say pretend to be an old lady and get who's that old lady?
That's my old lady.
Sorry, God damn it.
Pretend to be an old lady and
you know
just
what I mean?
stab
Like
them.
and then just gut one of the players or whatever. Like that's like it's not that they couldn't do that, but they wouldn't, because it would be like they wouldn't allow themselves to do that. Like they might not necessarily challenge the party openly. They might not declare themselves, but they would like attack in an obvious way. So what I might do, what I might even do is I might like seed the encounter. Like if I've decided that I want David to be after them, what I might do is I might say like, you know, on a certain day you're attacked on the road by this creature, and the Deva is basically like a CR4 monster because it can shapeshift. So it's a CR4 monster, and basically what I'd say is like after a point it just runs off, and maybe if the party go after it, they can't find it because the Deva just changes into something else and leaves.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of call back to that later as the Deva when they do encounter it in its full form, if they do.
Yeah, I mean, you could even have the previous fights have left scars on the Deva that are distinctive to the players, which is a way for you to tell them without telling them. Like, you know, they turn into a werewolf and attack the party, and then they turn into I don't know, the big dog that's magic proof and attack the party. It's huge. It's 100 feet tall. How do we beat it?
That's a 100-footed dog with a 100-foot tall.
Guys, 100 feet tall is pretty big.
And I think what's actually
absurd.
what's actually kind of cool, I've just realized, this is just an idea I just had, they can change shape, so they can obviously be like a person, right? But they've also got a very high charisma score, so they're very persuasive. So you could imagine that an evil Deva could like lead. He could persuade like a group of bandits to help him fight you and stuff. Like he could send people after you and kind of attack you indirectly in that way. So there's a lot of, and like you could even have it that like he has a consistent humanoid disguise or a trait that he can't hide when he's human, and that gets like every time you get attacked by these bandits and you're like, who the fuck are these guys? Why are they after us? And they're like, we were hired by this guy, and then like that happens 3 or 4 times, and then they find out that guy who's hiring them is the same dog that attacked him in that field, and it's all been this one fucking angel who's been after you for months.
I think that's a really cool way to kind of subvert the expectation of people who have played a lot of D&D, and you have them on this adventure, and then they're just like, oh, we encounter a bunch of bandits, and then we're being attacked by a bunch of wolves. But
the idea of like
turns
the
out
Jesus wolves.
It's been an angel the entire time.
Just like
what?
throwing
An
shit at
angel?
you constantly.
Yeah.
So
that
cool.
could be
I like
cool.
That.
So other than that, I suppose the only thing I'd say that would be kind of, if I was doing a very straight fight, so in a campaign I played in at one stage, we basically a demigod had gone rogue on the material plane, and we needed to kill it. And so we needed to get this weapon that was kind of an anti-god weapon. Like it was kind of, good at killing divine creatures, but because it was good at killing divine creatures, it was guarded by an angel. So we had to like be like, we need this. We actually do need this. And the angel's like, I'm not letting you pass. So we had to fight the angel. So I think it's worth mentioning as well that because angels are like stubborn to a fault, it is reasonable to say that a party of good characters might occasionally.
I mean, they're lawful. So like, if their law is do not let anyone into this place, they're not gonna
exactly like if they're guarding a hidden temple, but you know that the cure to the plague is in the hidden temple, then you're gonna have to get rid of this angel. So that's just a point as like why you might be fighting a non-evil angel. But the other thing I'd say is like, I think even if it isn't effective, I think if I was having the party fight a Deva, I think one of the things I'd really like to do is have them change shape a lot.
Yeah.
Like they're fighting it, and then it transforms into this huge like golden bear, and it starts like going at them with its claws, and like it almost doesn't matter that it's not necessarily as effective, because I think that would make the fight so interesting. And I really like the idea that the Deva adopts forms based on what the party have. So like the party has a lot of ranged combat, so the Deva changes into like a lion with an iron hide, and like arrows are pointless against it and stuff like that. It sort of uses its change shape power to react to the party. I think that'd be a really cool way of making the fight like you're not just fighting this like wicked buff surfer dude who's golden and is like really ripped and hard to hit for no reason, and he just keeps hitting you with his mace, and the mace does a lot of damage, which is not a bad fight. It's a sometimes fight, but I think the fight where like every 3 turns the Deva transforms into something new, and you have to completely change your tactics because it's just this different creature now.
There's no limit to the amount of times it can change shape. Like
there's no limit. It does take their action, so they can't attack, which is also a nice way of like, if you find out shit the Deva's killing somebody, them changing shape is them doing something useful on their turn that isn't killing the party, which is a nice way to give them a chance to recuperate if you're the kind of DM that feels like that's important.
Or if you're running an evil campaign and you want to fight the gods, like I touched on earlier.
Yes.
This is a messenger. You kill the messenger. And just
Very
do
cool.
all the blaspheming you possibly can.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Like I have always been so attracted to the idea that when you're playing an evil campaign that an order of paladin comes after you. I think that's like so cool.
I like the idea with evil campaigns where, like, honestly, if you're fighting a Deva, it's just like you just keep going up. Like you fight a couple of paladins, you fight the king, and then you fight a Deva, then you fight a god, because you're just so evil. You just want to keep fighting things, and you want to keep going up.
Yeah, you just want to keep punching up, and it doesn't matter what you're punching up at. Like
piercing the heavens, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically.
Well, that's okay. Well, I'm looking at the time now, and
yeah, I know. I was gonna say we've actually been going for a while.
So I guess like that's at least part 1 of Angels anyway.
That's part 1 of Angels. That was our episode on the Deva, the weakest of the angels.
Yeah, I don't see us doing too much on the Planetar and the Solar. There might be a little bit on that. So who knows? We don't know that, but that's at least that's part 1 anyway.
That's part 1. I think we'll get another episode out of the 2 of them together, but I might be wrong. I didn't think we'd get an hour out of the Deva. So
what will happen? You have to find out.
Find out.
Literally
next
have
time
to find out
on the Creature Club.
Yeah.
We still haven't decided on a theme yet.
Yeah. Do. That's
That was beautiful.
Yeah, like Cross Creature Club guys. If pass it around like wildfire, like the plague. Like both of them, they're both very different things, but
like the wildfire plague.
Please associate our podcast with both wildfires and plagues. Thank you.
Perfect.
Pass around, guys. If you know someone who likes D&D and wants to know more about monsters, let them know. And a show too, mate.
If you know Harrison Ford, ask him if he wants to sponsor us, because that would be really cool.
That's a good shout. If you have played a game with Devas, if you have run the game or you played in the game and you had a fight with them that we haven't described or that you think might be interesting if it had some of the features we described, do let us know.
Yeah.
And if you have any ideas for because we're doing this alphabetically, but if there's something that in particular you're interested in, let us know, because I don't know, we might not go alphabetically. We might go mad.
Yeah.
Go wild.
I mean, I don't think we will, honestly. I like the alphabet, but
and if we ever get to the point where people start sending us stuff in, send us in like homebrew monsters and stuff. That'll be pretty cool.
Oh, that'd be very cool. Yeah, if you actually have, definitely.
Our Twitters will probably be in the description of whatever you're listening to this on. So
we're like we're not big at all, so just send us a Twitter and we'll probably get back to you. So
yeah, honestly,
all right.
Anyway, that's part 1. So that's been Creature Club. That's pretty much everything. That's all we gotta say, I think.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
I need to think of a closing.
Stay cool. That's what I said last time.